Let me talk a little bit about the undercurrents that are discordant. There's a certain amount of Christian social gospel works its way up in the radical religious right line because they've been trained as that. They're trained against materialism. That's hard to put together with libertarians. But there's a little sense of stewardship of the natural world in the back of their minds. So you can appeal to them on the environment. And some of their churches do break away in that. They definitely believe in concern for the poor. They don't think the government should do it, they think the churches should do it, but they understand that's an issue. Libertarians don't actually give a shit about the poor. I'm sorry, but it's true. They're anti-racist. Libertarians have made a huge successful practice of crypto-racism. They've won election after election by appealing to racists without admitting it, using coins. And that's a little hard to put together with the radical religious right, because they really are opposed to it. And they believe in truth-telling deep down, and the Republican Party is kind of based on not telling the truth a lot. Then there's some old Baptist ideas, even more deeply hidden, about political quietism, separation of church and state. You ought to stay home, let the politicians do their own thing. Autonomy of conscience, which means how can you have all this political discipline if everybody's supposed to have a priesthood of all true believers and people thinking for themselves and reading the gospel for themselves? It's a little hard to put together sometimes. So there's space there to draw wedges when to think about and work on it. Nonetheless, they got an awful lot in common. They're radicalism, alienation. They want to uproot society, both the libertarians and the radical religious right. They hate government. They hate almost every private institution except themselves. They hate the media, they hate the universities, the nonprofits, the unions. They have a sense of persecution. They think the elites are against them. Well, we are. But that's not the same as persecution. It's just simple political opposition, which is considered legitimate in a democracy. And they have romantic ideas about violence. That's a long another rap I'm going to go into anyway. I'm not going to go into it now, but one should think a lot about violence, and how both of those movements have undercurrents of believing in violence. Then they both have basic right-wing notions in a lot of ways. They support limited government. They're not very happy with democracy. They tend to believe a dirty hands doctrine. They believe if you're going to go out in the world and do politics, you're going to get your hands dirty. And they knew that in the first place. And so they get their hands dirty, and they cheat. And they're willing to, in a way that a progressive doesn't start out thinking he's going to have to. They start out thinking they're probably going to have to cheat at it, because the world is evil. And then they've got a pretty distorted set of notions about the Constitution. And then they're crackpots. I've seen a lot like this. They're paranoid. I mean, they really are. They're crackpots. Sorry. Anyhow, what's the program? The movement conservative program. This is where this is why they stay together, because they agree on the program, even if they don't agree on theory. They want to take power. They want to win electoral votes, and they want to stack the courts. And they do it with a radical religious right providing the voters. Libertarian think tanks provide the ideology. Billionaires provide the money and the media. And they have an overall strong political discipline to make it work. Then they believe in division of the spoils once they take power. The social policy is going to be ruled by the radical religious right, and libertarians don't care because they're rich. They can go off and do what they want, and social policy doesn't affect them. So they don't really insist on having a liberal society to live in, because they can live liberally in the privacy of their own penthouses. Then the economic policy gets ruled by the libertarians. In other words, we're going to get this big business what it wants. Other policies, they decide based on trying to get enough votes. And the general rule is try to find something that we can support that the progressives can't support, and that nonetheless is a hot button issue that appeals to a bunch of people. In other words, demagoguery. Try to find some way to make people mad. We don't care what. So it makes people mad, and the other side can't support it, and we can get a bunch of people that will. The final thing they believe on is entitlement. They think that rule by any other coalition isn't just unfortunate, it's unjust. They really think it's unjust that Obama won, that it's deeply wrong. It isn't just that they lost something. There's something's evil in the universe that Obama won. Okay, well here's this is to summarize what does the right wing look like. This is just to summarize to get it all in mind. First of all, the radical right in general is people who are seeking radical change. There's two kinds of them. There's the fringe radical right that does not believe in electoral politics. They believe in throwing bombs, or they believe in survivalism, going off isolationism. They're open racists. They're just all the kind of people that don't do electoral politics. It's a pretty small number, actually. Then there's the movement conservatives, which I already talked about, radical religious right plus libertarians plus opportunistic billionaires. Then there are true conservatives. Movement conservatives is actually, it's an oxymoron. They're not conservatives, they don't conserve anything. The radicals are trying to change everything. Conservatives are people who want to conserve what we have. And there are some number of them left. George Will's a conservative. He's not a radical. I don't like him, but he's a reasonable person. He thinks about how to conserve the world we have, and he's honest about it. And a lot of Republicans are like that. They're not radical religious right, but they're not running their party anymore. The radical right is running it. Then there are the swing voters, and these are people that have conservative ideas and liberal ideas in their mind, and you've got to figure out how to appeal to them. And I didn't try to put numbers on this in that one, but here's something where I put numbers on it. Here's what the strategy looks like from the point of view of movement conservatives. First of all, they've got a core constituency, which is 20 to 22% of the voters. This is the radical religious right. That's a higher percentage, by the way, than the percentage of people that believe in dominionism and creationism. The reason it's higher is that they vote in bigger numbers. This is percentage of the voters, not percentage of the people. Think of the people out there, they vote more. Then there's another 5% of the 8% of the voters that are Republicans and Libertarians are going to turn out anytime they can be relied on. Then in every election they have to put together a coalition of another 20 to 26% of the voters out of the swing voter category. And they do it based on any message that they can find that work, and they do work between elections trying out messages to see which one work. And immigration looks like it was working pretty big. Now it's dying off. They'll find other things. That's the national strategy. And it's also, it kind of describes Kansas' strategy in the non-school board elections. School board elections are different because it's not really Republicans. It's radical religious right, period, that we're dealing with. Not the whole Republican Party. And in the Republican primary, the radical right pretty much dominates it because they get their voters out, even though they don't necessarily have a majority of the Republican Party, but they get a majority of the voters. Then in the general election, they try to win with stealth candidates, people that don't admit that they're creationists. Or they make arguments about teach the controversy. That's a good argument. It seems to work in elections because people don't know any better. You're an extremist if you don't believe in both sides talk. That can help you win an election. And then maybe they'll run spoilers in the Democratic elections. And at that, I'll quit.